In a world of cinema that often portrays focused characters that are unwavering in their pursuit of some vital goal, instead this film perfectly captures the aimlessness of a passive, self-absorbed 20-something coasting through life. It's refreshing to see a film that captures such a vague, difficult feeling to portray, and yet a feeling that I think most people can relate to at some point in their life. This film obviously depicts this from a millennial perspective, but I think that in capturing the symptoms of this middle-class millennial drift, the writer and director James Vaughan has almost prophetically captured the disease that has now metastasized to Gen Z. A general aimlessness and purposelessness that's hard to shake and seemingly ever-growing. A disposition that I would argue permeates beyond the middle class and could terrifyingly enough define this generation.
Kind of a downer, that story though.
But don't get too down about it, because the film captures far more than this in its broad and fine strokes and with compellingly dry humour.
I mean, look at this child's terrible posture and his poor attitude to his work.
Which is why today I'd like to discuss the Australian hidden gem, Friends and Strangers. It's tricky to describe exactly what this film is about. Looking at the IMDb synopsis, the film follows two upper middle class wanderers in a dryly comic exploration of displacement and ennui in contemporary Australia. So the summaries of this film are about as vague as the plot itself. It's a sort of river of scenes that are only connected by the main character. Other characters pop in and out as they would in daily life. So it's more about the moments, interactions, and the atmosphere than the plot. Let's put it that way.
Can you be more specific?
It's very much a film about the upper middle class. Issues that arise are often self-imposed or relational, and in the case that an issue is forced upon them, it's not the end of the world. You feel this absence of money-related complications, which makes the film feel a bit utopic. Mind you, the whining and consistent discontentment of the main character can be a bit grating at times.
It's just bad people. It's fucking ridiculous.
Would you stop complaining?
But this cocooned upper middle class world is what allows the space for these quiet, reflective moments.
Nothing horrific. Nothing hidden or dark or weird.
Towards the end, the protagonist seems to try to escape and avoid the complicated aspects of his life, which seems consistent with the character. I think why I see a lot of Gen Z in this film is that social media or the modern age seems to have amplified some of the pressures depicted in this film, and seems to be pushing more young people into an aimless drift, quite like the protagonist. So let's take a look at how the film creates this world. You'll notice the style and pacing of the film thematically matches the experience of the main character and defines the general atmosphere. The scenes are sometimes absurd or even surreal, and in depicting them in an unbroken, almost objective way, these aspects are presented to us without obstruction. The shots are often wide, clear, well lit and framed such that you can explore the image and its depicted scene as you see fit. Dimitri Zonders, the cinematographer of the film, says the following in an interview with Vanessa Abbott. I think I'd describe it almost as an incidental kind of filmmaking, as though things were taking place in the foreground while what was happening in the midground and far background were almost equally weighted. While he describes it as incidental, a lot of attention was given to this early on. Zonders explains how they put a focus on topography and the arrangement of people spatially within the scene. They took influence from the films of Angela Schanelek, for example, but also street photographers and painters like Arthur Boyd, whose compositions inspired Zonders to try to capture scenes of landscapes below the line of the horizon. Boyd is also directly mentioned by a character in the film, which is funny.
That's the painter, right? Arthur Boyd?
Zonders also mentions the director and I found that we loved films that sustain themselves in unbroken scenes and landscapes, which I think partly harkens back to those influences, but also to the use of long static takes. Leslie Felperin from The Guardian suggests that these long takes seem to expect you to interpret them as either profound or comical. I don't agree with this. I don't think the length of the takes is asking you to interpret anything. I think the long takes are an atmospheric tool used to complement the storytelling, quite like in Eric Romaire's work, which other interviewers and journalists have also noted. How the scenes are presented is dictated by the nature of the scenes themselves. It helps to capture the apathetic drift of the main character, as these longer takes give the film enough breathing room for you to fall under the same spell. It's in these quiet moments that you can put yourself in this character's shoes, at that age, in that situation, in that environment. You're quickly reminded of times in which you felt uncertain about the future, or like you were being carried by the wind. It's this aspect of the style and pacing that allows you to slow down and get in the same gear as the characters. I can't imagine this film working if depicted in any other way. Also, it's the great little details in the scenes that make it so much more immersive. The film touches on so many deeper subjects in passing, some more explicitly addressed, like the grieving father who doesn't want to give away his late wife's clothes, and some left unspoken in scenes that play out without dialogue. They give the film additional color and depth. While we already covered some of the points mentioned by the cinematographer Dimitri Zonders, I'd like to touch on one more thing that he said in the same interview. I think from experience, the irony is that it always takes an incredible amount of planning and preparation to make things feel unplanned or accidental. It's crazy to me that the film feels so effortless, and yet of course, like any film, this stemmed from a tremendous amount of work from the team behind it, shooting the 120-page script at around 60 locations over 38 shoot days in New South Wales and Australia. Zonders and Vaughan collaborated on numerous art films and documentaries leading up to the film's shooting, such that when production began, they were very much in tune. It's interesting that all of this focused, directed effort and precision was harnessed to create such a free-flowing, loose film. The music for this film fits so well that I was convinced it was composed for the film. I was scouring the internet trying to find the composer when I finally checked the end credits and found that they were selected pieces. To me, one of the most distinct is this hypnotic solo flute piece by John Gibson, which is called Untitled, from the 1977 album Two Solo Pieces. Not only is this an amazing piece of music, but the dissipating, airy feeling of these repeated scales of notes fits the guideless nature of the film. The way the runs take a few notes and stop, and then repeat the scale and go a bit further. It feels like when a gust of wind lifts up a pile of leaves, but then drops them, only to pick them up again and take them further with a stronger gust. This fits so well with how the main character seems to allow similar coincidental forces of his environment dictate his outcomes. It also adds that surreal feeling of the film with this kind of haunting quality it has. At the same time, it's calming. It feels like lying under a tree in the sun, because letting yourself drift is relaxing. Not making decisions releases all responsibility. You give yourself up to circumstance. This main character seems like someone who by nature acts in this way. It is his complacency that allows for this, and it is his situation that allows him to be complacent.
What are you talking about?
Okay, I kind of went off on a tangent there, so let's refocus and I'll talk about the performances a bit. The behavior of the main character aligns with his complacency and aimlessness in a painfully realistic way. He doesn't make firm decisions. He lets opportunities pass seemingly unaware of them, and he seems to fall into a lot of the situations he's in.
What happened, David? You just punched straight through my fucking wall.
In so many films, the characters are sharp and witty and say exactly the right thing at the right time. It's refreshing, albeit frustrating, to watch someone either say the wrong thing or remain silent in a moment that required input. It's horrifyingly relatable. It's like remembering a conversation and realizing you should have said something, except you're watching the protagonist do it in real time.
Remunerative? Is that a word?
You mean lucrative?
Yeah, I think so.
What did you say?
Remunerative. I don't think it's a word. I think I just made it up.
No, I don't think so either.
In the case of the other characters, the interactions feel so natural as well. Conversations are interrupted, derailed, and picked up again in an organically messy way. and the conversations are often pointless or superfluous. So much conversation on a daily basis is completely pointless. Yet screenwriters are told to be efficient and use every word on the page to progress the story. But in real life, nobody's considering the story. Sometimes people just want to say things because it's on their mind, or they feel lonely and want to talk to someone.
Yeah, I just thought I'd let you get a heads up so that, you know, if you get all set up and they come along and move you on, you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Including these interactions makes the film feel so much more real and really lets you sink into the film. Some journalists and critics seem to often use the words absurd and surreal when describing the film. I have as well, but it's hard to put a finger on exactly what's creating that impression. I think the surreal feeling stems from a number of aspects. The vacuum-like drifting state that the protagonist is in, the way the story moves on without directly connecting scenes, the dreamy quality of these serene seaside moments, and the hypnotic music I already mentioned. But so much of the film is so naturalistic that I can't quite justify the statement. The absurdity, I guess, is the humorous and awkward situations that the main character gets into and the wacky characters he meets. But I think while you could describe them as unusual, I find them quite realistic actually. I guess absurdly realistic. I'm realizing now this could be another depiction of the absurdity of human nature. I think I'm starting to realize a trend in the films I like to analyze. This is like my third video essay and I'm already repeating myself.
Real original!
The film is very funny, and I found myself enjoying that humor even more when rewatching it with people that I shared the film with by discovering humorous aspects I hadn't picked up on from watching it by myself. The film has a very dry and subtle sense of humor. It doesn't demand you to laugh. It lets the characters exist in their environment, creating awkward or confusing situations, and you can enjoy whatever parts you like.
I used to be in an ambient electronic band in the 80s. Hot Porpoise, you wouldn't remember us
Oh,
before your
Porpoise.
time.
I love Hot Porpoise.
Oh, really? You know us?
Legendary.
Much like the other thematic elements of the film, you're invited to explore them, rather than be beaten over the head with them. The film has a level of respect for its audience that I would say is disappointingly rare nowadays. The effect of this is that the humor is made that much better because it feels like you're genuinely finding humor in a seemingly real moment, rather than having it forced onto you by a staged performance. This again can be traced back to the excellent naturalistic performances given in the film. I'd highly recommend watching this film. It's a quiet, contemplative one, so keep that in mind when you put it on. I first watched the film when it came on Mubi a few years ago, which seems to be how a lot of people found it. I mean, as of now, almost 5,500 of you have reviewed it on Mubi. But I still don't understand why this film didn't go further than it did. Why is nobody talking about it? I can't find a single video essay on it. It seems underappreciated. There's so much more to this film that I couldn't even cover. Like, for example, Vaughan mentions that the script connects to white Australian historical stasis. Unfortunately, I really don't know anything about Australian history and I've never been there, so I didn't pick up on the nuances of that topic in my viewing of the film. So I'd really be curious to know more about that from someone who's able to elucidate the context. I'd also love to know your thoughts about the film in general. I think people should talk about this film more, and I really hope he makes another one. Well, that's all for now. Thanks for listening, and see you soon.